IB Nation, welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast. That's Ryan Roberts. I'm Brian Driscoll. And it's been long-awaited news, Ryan. No one's shocked by it, but you know what? The minute you hear it, you still get fired up. JaDon Blair commits to Notre Dame. This is a big one, Ryan. It is this right here, man. This is a gap closer. This is a gap-closing kid. We'll talk about the safety class as a whole. But for right now, this is a big one for Notre Dame, Ryan. It's been a long haul, twists and turns we'll get into, but JaDon Blair is now in the class. You just added a top 50 football player to your class.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a top 50 football player that has legit 5-star upside. Like if JaDon Blair ended up as a top 25 player in the class when all is said and done, I would not be shocked even one bit. I mean, you just don't often get kids that are 6'4" plus, that are 190 pounds, that can play center field, that can come down into the box, that can play in the slot at times. He is a rare football player. I feel like we use the word generational, rare, like those types of words way too often. But I mean, literally the size profile combined with the movement skills, he has rare upside that he can bring to the table. And this is one that we have felt good about. If you're a message board member at boards.irishbreakdown.com, you know that we have felt confident about this one for 3 months at this point. Like it's been a very long time. And as you mentioned, there like every recruitment, there was some twists and turns, some things to figure out, some obstacles, all those types of things. But regardless, this was one that just always felt like it was going to happen, because if you talk to JaDon, you talk to his family, you talk to the people around him, you talk to Notre Dame, you talk whoever you talk about, this kid's a Notre Dame kid. And we use that a cliche a lot, obviously, but soft-spoken, academically oriented, great family, really sees the long-term over the short-term in a lot of instances. This is a great get for Notre Dame, both on and off the field.
Ryan, this is one that was only ever in doubt because Chris O'Leary left. Like, that's the only reason this was ever in doubt. And even then, it wasn't really in doubt. I mean, I remember first time you and I talked after you talked to JaDon after Chris O'Leary left, and you're like, yeah, he's got to rethink some things. But it was very quick. I mean, very quick that Notre Dame kind of got back in there. And, it really reminds me a lot of like the Gerby Lambert recruitment last year, but even less drama. Because there was a time in there where like, you're not sure if like when Chris O'Leary left, there was never a concern that Notre Dame wasn't the leader. It's just more of like, okay, this might open it back up. Nobody ever emerged back on top ahead of Notre Dame. It's just like, well, I got to keep my options open, and Mike Mickens made pretty quick work of that. But it is similar to where, Gerby's being recruited by Harry Hiestand. He leaves. There was a lot longer period in between then because Mike Mickens got promoted pretty quickly. And it was a similar thing. Okay, Joe Rudolph, you're stepping into a good position. You're the leader. Now go seal the deal, convince him that you're the guy. And that's exactly what Mike Mickens did. And honestly, if it's not for that, this was never even a conversation. I mean, to me, in my opinion, this was never even a conversation where this kid was going to end up. He's been very pro Notre Dame. I know there's been a lot of spin in this about this school, that school, but this one's been a deal where he was Notre Dame's to lose for a very long time.
Brian, when you're talking about recruits and talking to recruits and talking to parents of recruits, a lot of times you're left to kind of read between the lines, read the tea leaves, and try to figure out exactly what's going on. The great thing about JaDon and covering him is that anytime I got to talk to JaDon, text with JaDon, whatever, and interview JaDon, he was always honest, right? Like he was always so honest about every single thing. I remember talking to him after O'Leary left, and he was like, to be completely honest with you, like I need to evaluate things now, because that's who has been recruiting me for the better part of a year. And I have a really cool backstory that's going to come out on the website tomorrow, as far as like a coach piece, a little bit of backstory of his early relationship with Chris O'Leary, which I thought was kind of fascinating. But regardless, like even when there was that trial and tribulation and that obstacle, he was honest about it. There was an evaluation period that needed to happen. He was a kid that was never going to rush the process. He was going to let his process play out. You knew when he was going to commit. You knew what was on his mind. You knew the teams that were involved, and there was no ever wavering from the process, which was always very refreshing when you're talking about JaDon Blair. But I just think that this is a great day, obviously, for the Blair family. 17th birthday today for JaDon. Happy birthday to him. Great commitments, obviously, to a great institution like Notre Dame. And he has now, as long as Notre Dame is able to keep the band together, talking about Ivan Taylor to stay in the class, this has an argument as maybe I don't know historically as far as like the Lou Holtz era or before that, right? Recruiting wise, but the best safety class that I have ever seen personally, I've never seen a 3-man class like they're bringing in. I mean, even no, all due respect to Ethan Long, but if you just took JaDon Blair and Ivan Taylor, I don't know if there's a better duo Notre Dame's ever signed in my time. Like, it's incredible.
Ryan, I was actually going to say this. I actually think JaDon and Ethan, or Ivan and Ethan, is one of their best duos of the last decade. When you throw those three in together, it's not even comparable, because there's not, to your point, there's not a 1-2 punch like this 1-2 punch. There isn't one. And then you throw Ethan Long, who I believe you and I both have graded as a top 150 caliber kid, right? 150 to 200 caliber kid, right?
In that ballpark. Yep. Absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
So that's your number 3. And you know, we'll get into kind of the backstory and the class impact and all that kind of stuff that matters, Ryan. But this was a position that, no doubt about it, Notre Dame needed to completely rehaul the roster. And when you look at getting Bronte Johnson last year and Kennedy Urlacher and Tabron Benny Powell a year after getting a Don Schuler, Ben Minnick, and Luke Talich, that started the process from a depth standpoint. You got good players, you know, Adon's super high floor, Bronte's super high ceiling, and a lot of good players in underneath that. The focus now is like, you need impact players. And that's the thing about JaDon Blair that you look at, Ryan. This is an impact player. This is a kid that brings game-changing skill set to the table. And here's the important thing, Ryan. You think 6'4", 190, 195, what is the first thought? Well, he's probably going to be a guy that's going to have to come play in the second level at some point. Maybe rover, linebacker. Or even as a safety, he's just a box guy.
Yes.
The thing about JaDon is he's sort of a new age safety. He's the kind of kid that, coming along a couple years after Kyle Hamilton, if Notre Dame can develop him to reach his full potential, people are going to have to start rethinking the safety position a little bit with these type of players, because this is a kid that brings true rangy third level talent to the table in a 6'4", really long arm body. And the other thing I love about him is he's not a football only kid. No. Meaning this isn't a guy that just plays football year round, which kind of gets you excited. He's a very good basketball. I think he was all district basketball player.
All area, I think. Yeah,
right?
All area player.
And a really good basketball player. And I believe he's run some track in the past as well. This is a kid that is just starting to scratch the surface, Ryan, of who he can be. We'll dive more into that when we get into the film room. But this is a big one. This is a really big one for Notre Dame, because it's also an area where Notre Dame is trying to dominate. Like, Notre Dame is really trying to make North Carolina a base state. And when you look at what they've done the last couple of years with the impact talent that they've gotten out of the state, now JaDon Blair, a year after you got Bryce Young, Micah Gilbert, and Jack Larson, this is an area that's favorable for Notre Dame, because there's a lot of Carolina kids that aren't born and bred, raised, not, they'll be the type of kids that are they'll be kids that, the way that Carolina is in the ACC is, they'll love Carolina basketball, Duke basketball, but maybe not have the same affinity for the football program. So there's a lot of Notre Dame type of kids there. That's kind of where I'm getting at it. And JaDon fits that. He fits that kind of brand where he's an elite talent. He fits what Notre Dame's about. I saw some knucklehead at one point in time said he's not really a Notre Dame type of kid, which is one of the dumbest things. You know who I'm talking about.
I'm not sure if I do, but
the dude, Michigan guy.
Oh,
right?
Okay, got it.
Yeah. And I'm like, no, actually, this is exactly what a Notre Dame type of kid is. Lots of swagger, lots of confidence, super talented, understands there's a lot more to life than just football. And that's one of the reasons that Notre Dame started on him early, Ryan, was because of that fit. But getting into the state of North Carolina, Ryan, is also very important. Very important.
I mean, and you did it, obviously, getting Micah Gilbert was a big one in 2024, right? Because at one point it was like, it didn't look like that was going to be a guy that you could get. You should always get a guy like a Jack Larson if you want it, because he's a tight ends. Like, we should come to expect that at the University of Notre Dame, that you should pretty much be able to get whatever tight ends you want to get every given year. Like, that's pretty much that should be a foundational thing for Notre Dame. Getting Bryce Young, Bryce Young, legacy kid. That is a kid that you should more often than not get, more often than not. JaDon Blair, honestly, that's a kid that Notre Dame has probably missed on more than they've gotten over the last several years, right? Like getting that type of kid. I know they got Kyle Hamilton out of Georgia, who's kind of a same style of player, but
who's, older brother, went to Penn. Again, different type of kid.
Yes.
Very different type of kid. Yeah.
And JaDon is just usually a kid that, similarly, here's an example. Jordan Young is a 2025 safety out of North Carolina as well, right? Notre Dame wanted him bad early in this cycle, right? And then obviously things went in a couple different directions for both sides. Jordan Young is a kid that's probably going to stay down south because that's the pull, right? JaDon Blair, typically 6'4" kid from the Carolinas, a lot of heavy interest, obviously in the ACC, especially a school like Florida State. That's usually a kid that stays down south a little bit. Notre Dame able to get that kid to come up north and bring that 6'4", 33-inch arms is what he measured in at the On3 Elite Series. I know that he obviously is a great vertical leap, being the big time basketball player he is. Like, this is just more of the caliber of athlete that Notre Dame needs to get on a year-to-year perspective. They need to continue, because what was the thing that Marcus Freeman basically said the minute he got here? We need to get longer and more athletic everywhere. Everywhere. Yep. What did you do at safety today? You got longer and more athletic and more impactful more than anything, right? So now you're projecting forward, Bryan, and I'm saying 2025 class, because after this year, Xavier Watts is gone. After this year, Rod Hurd is gone. You are going to have a bunch of rising juniors or lower that are going to compete for reps, and you need guys like JaDon Blair, Ivan Taylor potentially, and Ethan Long also included in this conversation to come in and compete to play, man. Like, this isn't just a JaDon, you're red shirt in year one and you're not playing. Like, he has an opportunity to come in and earn reps day one. He's that type of a talent who also is going to be enrolling early at the University of Notre Dame, which obviously play into his favor. So all those things in kind of put into a vacuum for a second, huge get for the short term and long term of Notre Dame football and recruiting as well.
Ryan, I love how seriously you made that comment. It just shows why because it's like, I'm over here laughing because the goal is to get longer and more athletic. And I'm like, I don't know how much longer you're going to be able to ever get at safety than JaDon Blair. I mean, that's the thing, but he's also a bit unique, Ryan, because you don't usually have 6'4" guys that have the kind of all around athleticism. And I'm looking forward for people to seeing that in the film room, but you're absolutely right. You can't get much longer in athletic than what you're getting in JaDon Blair. You really can't.
It was silly. Was somebody on the board today was like, this has to be the longest safety Notre Dame's had since Kyle Hamilton. I'm like, yes, but also he might be taller than Kyle Hamilton. Yeah. So like, we are getting, because Kyle Hamilton was what, like 6'1" and an eighth. I mean, I talked to someone that said that JaDon is at least 6'4.5" right now. Like at least 6'4.5", might be 6'5" by the time he gets to Notre Dame. Like, it's wild to think how long these athletes are getting. Yeah.
What's funny is somebody says longest since Kyle Hamilton. Like, Kyle Hamilton played here a decade ago.
Right.
Like, guys, that was 3 years ago. Like, he's only in his second year in the NFL. Kyle hasn't been that long ago. But it also does show when you have a kid, we can't say this enough, Ryan, right? Mm-hmm. Here's one thing that helps Notre Dame with JaDon Blair. The academic piece has always been there. The tradition has always been there. What are they able to sell to JaDon Blair now that they couldn't sell in the past? Look at the NFL. We've had 3 Pro Bowlers in the last few years from Notre Dame that play safety. And then another guy, Alohi Gilman, who's got a chance to maybe be that kind of player here in the next couple of years, the way he's playing for the Chargers, at least as a special teams guy, at the very least. You now have something to show. And in JaDon's specific case, you can say, hey, look, who was the D coordinator for Marcus Freeman, for Kyle Hamilton his last year? It's Marcus Freeman. So you can say, look, we know how to use a guy like you, not as a linebacker, not as a second level guy, but as a safety. That matters when you can do that.
And I also I just wrote an article that I know will be live at some point on the site. I mean, a lot of great content going up right now, obviously.
It's scheduled for 4, by the way.
Yeah. So this, and because we haven't talked about this at all, Mike Mickens, the best corner coach in college football, now manning the entire secondary for Notre Dame. This is the first safety commitment under Mike Mickens. I mean, that is a historical thing in my opinion, because I don't care what the recruiting rankings say. I care about what my eyes tell me. And what my eyes tell me is that I'm not sure, because somebody asked this on the board too, and I think that there's some legitimate conversation here. when you look at all the safeties in the 2025 class, when I look at them all in their entirety of the guys that I've seen, there's only maybe one or two guys that I would say are rare football players. And JaDon Blair is one of those guys. You just don't see a lot of dudes that look like him with the athleticism he has walking around on the planet Earth, like an absolutely incredible athlete at the safety position. So for Mike Mickens to be able to come in, calm the storm, make JaDon still understand that he is a priority for the class and get him to commit to the University of Notre Dame, great commitment and first commitment for Mike Mickens for Notre Dame at the safety position.
That's a big thing, Ryan, was this now says, hey, I can recruit safety like I recruited the cornerback position. That's a big part. Because he did great at corner, but this is a little different animal. You don't have the track record, but that's where Notre Dame kind of can sell itself. But that's where Mike Mickens has to have a plan for how to get this done. And when that plan goes into effect, you're rolling. I got to say this too about the commitment video. I have never seen a kid do the hat thing that I've not disliked. Even some kids that have picked Notre Dame. He was the first kid I've seen do it where I was like, you know what? He showed respect. Like he did it and it was fun. He put the two out because I love them all. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't throw it around, stomp on it. He did it respectfully. And that was if I didn't already know where he was going, I'd have been a little nervous the way he picked up that first hat. Sure. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I was like, hold on a second.
I did like that. I think the last hat that he picked up before Notre Dame was Michigan as well. So I think it was very fitting to know that Michigan was the last hat that he kind of trolled a little bit before picking up that Notre Dame hat finally.
I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that thoroughly. So big commitment from Notre Dame of JaDon Blair. This is a big one. We're gonna hopefully have JaDon here on soon, Ryan, but I do think this is something else too. Is Penn State has been a school that has really had a lot of success on the East Coast, from the Carolinas up, Virginia, Maryland, DC. Notre Dame hasn't won a lot of these battles against Penn State for Mid-Atlantic East Coast kids. That's another part of that. And you'd beat the defending champs who threw everything into this recruitment. I mean, everything. Yes. They pulled out all the stops to try to get him, and it never mattered. I mean, just going into the visits, it was like, look, I was told this before the visits. It's going to be hard to pass up Notre Dame, but going to go in with an open mind. And just after every visit, it was like, that was a great visit, but it's not Notre Dame. Great visit, but it's not Notre Dame. But Notre Dame hasn't won a lot of these type of battles. Skill player on defense, Mid-Atlantic. And because, like you said about Jordan Young's a great example. They could get no traction with Jordan Young. Like I think he came
up even took a visit. He even took an unofficial visit there.
Nothing, just nothing. Yep. That to me is that was big.
Yeah. Well, Penn State's been one of those annoying teams, haven't they? I mean, I feel like, because you're right. I feel like because Virginia was the state that people always kind of termed with Penn State as far as the state that they kind of they dominated for whatever reason. I mean, I think Brent Pry obviously was a big reason for that. Like, they did really good in Virginia, and it's I don't think it's a surprise that Brent Pry has gone down to Virginia Tech and is starting to kind of garner more interest for Virginia guys, right? To be able to maybe stay in the state a little bit. But yeah, they've dominated Virginia. They've dipped into the Carolinas. They've been in Maryland a lot over the years as well. And like the Catholic schools that we keep urging Notre Dame to, let's get into the Maryland Catholic schools. Like, that has to happen at some point here, right? DC Catholic schools, we need to do it. But yeah, he is a kid that, look, I mean, Penn State was the main battler for a long time. Michigan entered the fold and made a valiant effort down the stretch, especially the last month or so. Like, they really did a good job in that instance. But Penn State is a kid, Brian. I mean, that if he's going to come up north, JaDon Blair probably typically would come up to go to Penn State rather than Notre Dame. I mean, it's kind of a factual statement, right? So again, getting him from North Carolina, the skill that he has, the upside that he has, it is just a clear, easy fit for the Irish. And I'm glad that he comes from such a great family, right? Because I've gotten to know the family. I know you've gotten to know the family a decent amount at this point, and they are a family that I think sees a lot of the bigger picture, which we always talk about a lot.
That's an important piece of it too, Ryan, is for Notre Dame to win these battles, they have to win over the family as well. and they did a very good job of that. And that was a big part of this battle too, to get that. From just kind of wrapping this part of it up, my understanding is Michigan did make a valiant effort. I do believe they still finished third from my conversations. I don't think they ever they made, if Notre Dame wasn't in the mix, they would have made it a little bit. They would have made Penn State sweat a lot more than they made Notre Dame sweat. Is that a fair way of putting it, Ryan? Like they would have made, that would have been a really tough battle. If Notre Dame, take Notre Dame out of the equation, I still think Penn State would have been next. But it just, Notre Dame was just kind of way out in front on this one. And Michigan made it close with Penn State for who would be runner up. But I still think Penn State, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that the one constant throughout his recruitment, because Michigan had a big changeover on their staff too. Chris O'Leary left. The one constant was Anthony Poindexter at Penn State. Was the one constant, and Anthony Poindexter did a great job in this recruitment.
Yes,
like,
he did.
Talking to the family, they actually loved Penn State. I mean, the lot. So this isn't one where it's like Notre Dame is just this, and the other schools didn't do a good job recruiting. Penn State did a great job recruiting JaDon Blair.
I will say this is I do think that the DC change at Penn State kind of tipped it into Notre Dame's favor a lot. Like if Manny Diaz was still the defensive coordinator at Penn State, I think this one would have been a lot heavier of a battle. I still think Notre Dame probably would have won out, but I do think it would have been a lot closer. Guys, let's be honest about this. And I will say this, and if we get JaDon, we'll talk about it a little bit more in depth. All the schools did a great job. I know he's going to say all the great things, but in the end, Notre Dame had a sizable gap of a win here. Like this was not one where I think that it was a flip of the coin, 50-50, Notre Dame, Penn State. Like Notre Dame won this one pretty substantially, right? And so credit to Coach Mickens. Talked about Al Golden a lot. They talked about Marcus Freeman a lot when I interviewed them right before making the decision a couple days ago. So yeah, I think that this was just it was a tremendous win by the staff because he did have great relationships with Penn State. He had good relationships with Michigan as well. I mean, those things ended up winning up.
They had to win it. You keep saying that they had to win it.
Absolutely.
And that was an important one, right? And this isn't one where it's like, it's yours to lose. You had to win it. And it also shows too, what the big part of what Notre Dame's recruiting success has been a team effort from the head coach on down. Al Golden played his role. Mike Mickens clearly played his role. Chad Bowden played his role. Marcus Freeman played his role. And that's what makes this such a formidable operation. When Notre Dame gets everybody going in the same direction, something that had not been true for a long time, that's kind of what happens.
Yeah.
Let's get into the class impact, Ryan, and talk about the class impact next, because when we've kind of talked about the three safeties. So JaDon Blair is the 22nd kid to commit to Notre Dame. He's the 13th defensive player to commit to Notre Dame, and he's the third safety. He joins a class that has Ivan Taylor and Ethan Long. That is a very good two-man safety class. You add this one into the mix, and this is an elite safety class, Ryan. And I don't see how anybody surpasses it. Maybe somebody gets on that level, but I don't know how anybody surpasses this. You have a legitimate top 50 player in JaDon Blair, a borderline top 50 player, surefire top 100 guy in Ivan Taylor, and then a borderline top 150-ish kind of guy in Ethan Long, who I think has a lot more room to get better as he gets a little bit more explosive and gets a little bit older. But Ryan, first and foremost, we'll talk specifics about how they fit together, but just overall, let's really dive into this. This isn't just a great safety class for Notre Dame. You made the comment earlier. I don't know when the last time Notre Dame had a safety class like this, and you are correct.
Yeah.
But this isn't just for Notre Dame. This is one of the best safety classes that you're going to see at all. I mean, this is what Bama does. This is what Georgia does. This is what you have to do to recruit an elite level. That's what caliber class is. I just don't know I don't know if there's a combination of safeties out there that's going to make me say it's better than this one. I think the best someone could do is on par, in my opinion, for this class.
Well, I think the best part about it, I know we'll get more into that as far as how these players fit together stylistically, but or position stylistically, but that is a big part of it, right? Like if I had, actually, I don't want to use that example because if you had 3 JaDon Blairs in the class, you could use them all in different type of way. But if you had a safety that was a pure strong safety, too high guy that's going to come down to the line of scrimmage and he's going to play in confined spaces, if you had that guy can be a top 50 player. But if you had 3 of those types of safeties, who's going to play from the roof? Like who's going to play man-to-man coverage in the slot at times? Like you don't have a perfect safety tandem. you have three guys with different skill sets, which I think first and foremost matters when you talk about this type of conversation. Now, on the flip side of it, we always talk about gap closing and gap erasing and all those things. This is a gap erasing, extending, closing, whatever term you want to throw next to it. This is the type of safety class that will be on par with anybody. So, and maybe better than most, right? So in the respect, you look at this and say, well, Notre Dame's safety class is going to be as good as anybody. If we're talking about projecting forward now, imagine year 2, year 3 with JaDon Blair, Ivan Taylor, Ethan Long. That's where gaps get extended and taken potentially in this class, because Notre Dame's getting there, man. They are in the secondary. Because, I mean, we could even extend this conversation to the 3 corners that are in the class with Dallas Golden and Mark Zachary and Creed Thomas. When you put that 6-man class together, Notre Dame's secondary class in general in the 2025 class is going to be as good as anybody in college football. Think about that for a second. We're not too long ago, all due respect to Nick McLeod, Sean Crawford starting in a playoff game. Those days are Clarence Lewis starting in a playoff game.
Who just transferred because he's not getting playing time at Notre Dame. Right.
This is, guys, there was a time not too long ago where secondary and, more importantly, depth of a secondary was a major issue at Notre Dame. Major issue. I mean, there was times where it was bleak, man. It was really bleak. Now we're projecting 2 years from now. Think 2026. Think 2027, even if you want. You're going to be talking about some guys potentially entering the transfer portal. Those conversations are going to happen because the depth of the secondary is going to be so much better. You know what I know? 2020 against Bama, where I'm watching Devonta Smith just kept bubble screens and killing everybody in space. Those times are about to be far behind you. Because, yes, Devonta Smith is still going to make that play occasionally, but then you're going to have JaDon Blair or Ivan Taylor or Ethan Long or somebody else that can make that play occasionally in space. That's how you cut a gap. That's called gap erasing right there.
Ryan, I'm glad you brought that game up, because you remember what happened early in that game? They tried to run an outside go ball against Kyle Hamilton, and he almost picked it off. So they basically just said, we're not going to do that anymore. And they basically spent the rest of the game attacking the perimeter with quick game. And it just was their athletes were better than Notre Dame's athletes. There was one particular player, they threw a now screen to Devonta Smith, and he made like 4 guys miss and gained like 20 yards. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it was because they could avoid that one stud. If you just got one stud, then okay, sure, he's great, but we can avoid him. And in Notre Dame's case, they had 2 studs on the entire defense, with also Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah.
Yes.
But there was a big talent gap between their top guy and the rest. And you and I have talked about this a million times, so why not do it one more final time, my friend? Notre Dame has been able to compete with a lot of teams around the country in their top 5-6 guys on their entire football team. The difference is that, like 2020 is a perfect example. I'll stack up Kyle Hamilton and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah and Michael Mayer, even as a true freshman, at just talent-wise, up against just about anybody that anyone's going to throw at Notre Dame. The difference is numbers 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 weren't even close in favor of the other team. Now, when you're talking about this type of safety class, just safety, and then we'll bring corner in a second, who do you avoid? And we're not even talking about Bronte Johnson from last year or Kennedy Urlacher or Adon Schuler or guys like that. Just this class alone, who do you avoid? Okay, we're going to pick on Ethan Long. Good luck with that, because he might have the best ball skills of the entire group that we're talking about. That's what's – when you talk about closing the gap, Ryan, that's what we're talking about. It's not just landing a good player. Yeah. This is a group that says, okay, you want to try to avoid let's say JaDon Blair makes that kind of play against Alabama. All right, well, we're not going to go with him anymore on those kind of balls. So who are you going to attack now? Ivan Taylor, Ethan Long, Dallas Golden, Mark Zachary? That's my point.
I think you can even illustrate it in a different way as well, because you could say Notre Dame player 8 is not as good as Alabama player 8, for instance, right? But I think the other big difference that we need to talk about is so in that case of Devonta Smith in space, that's Alabama player 1 versus, let's say, a Notre Dame player 8 in Sean Crawford, right? Let's illustrate that way. The problem is, even still, their player 1 versus our player 8, that gap is still way too big, man. Like, it's still huge and massive. It's not even the simple fact of like, hey, they're going to throw to, I forget, who's that white slot receiver that Alabama had that year?
Slade Bolden.
Slade Bolden, right. So Slade Bolden versus versus Sean Crawford. That's an okay matchup, right? Slade's going to win some. Sean will win a couple other. Like, that's a good matchup, right? But the problem is that the gap between whoever their best player is and Notre Dame's 7th or 8th best player, like, it was just way too wide, right? That's the difference. Because even if now you say, Devontae, JaDon tackled you in space because he's Notre Dame's player 1 and Devontae's player 1, so their gap isn't that far apart. The problem is still when you motion him across and now he's going against the other safety. So now let's say that's Ethan Long or Ivan Taylor. The thing that we're illustrating here is that the gap between player 1 and player 8 is different now.
Right.
And that's the difference. You can't scheme against a certain player anymore if Notre Dame keeps recruiting in the secondary to this level, right? There's not going to be a weak spot. One player might still be better than the other, but there is not this massive gap that there has been way too often at Notre Dame.
Ryan, let's talk about it from this standpoint. Obviously, it's not just about, okay, you landed 3 highly ranked players. You said it earlier. It's also about, are you finding guys who can play together? If you go out and sign the 5 best offensive linemen in the country and they happen to be 4 guards in the center, you may not have a great offensive line. You're going to have a great interior offensive line, but you may have some problems to tackle, right? It's about finding guys who can play together. Let's talk a little bit about how these 2 kids play together, because the thing I love is JaDon Blair and Ethan Long can do all things well. They can play the run well. They can play the pass well. They're good in zone. They're good in man, all of it. But they do it quite differently. That's an important part of this thing as well. And then we'll kind of bring Ethan Long into that and round out the trio. So just let's dive into that, Ryan, about how this trio, and especially the 1-2 punch of Ivan and JaDon can play together.
Sure. Well, I would say it like this. JaDon is a player with his length. Again, it's 6'4", 190 plus pounds already. He's the guy that whether he is a field or boundary safety, whether he's to the short side or the long side of the field, you can bring him to the middle of the field, play him in single high at times. You can keep him at 2 high. He can come down into the box. He can come in as an alley player. He can work inside out. But the big thing about him, which makes him so versatile and so different and so unique, is that he can play from the roof. He can rotate back. And when you combine that with an Ivan Taylor is such a diverse comparison to his skill set, because Ivan Taylor is much more of a short area guy, right? Like Ivan Taylor is a guy that I could say year 1, you're going to start at nickel, right? You're starting at nickel, or we're going to play you at safety and have you be the guy that more often than not, maybe you're the field safety that's going to rotate down and play in the slot a little bit when we're going more single high looks, right? So I think that those guys are such different components, because yes, I can use JaDon in the slot a good bit against some bigger receivers. I can use him in the slot to eliminate tight ends at times, but Ivan Taylor, I feel like, could be a true slot, while I believe that JaDon is that true long, athletic, rangy freak show that can play single high, could play 2 high, could come down in the box. He can do a little bit of everything.
You know, it's funny. There's matchups against certain teams. Let's say you're playing Georgia from last year. You may say, hey, look, we can't put Ivan Taylor in the slot against Brock Bowers. We can put JaDon Blair there. And so JaDon's a slot in that game. And then there's another game where, maybe they have a little bit more of a shifty slot and you need to protect the middle of the field. So now Ivan's going to be the one that comes down and plays that role. Now JaDon's, playing center field or playing in the alley. So the fact that you can play them together, and then Ethan Long has some of that ability as well, where Ethan can be, that center field where JaDon comes down. So I think the fact that you're getting guys that can play together, they're not battling for the same spot. That's going to be the big key.
You know my dream, Brian, because I know we're getting ready to get somebody on here, right?
Yeah.
But like my dream is that 2 to 3 years from now, you're talking about a starting safety duo, JaDon Blair, Ethan Long, with a Ivan Taylor as the starting slot, and you could do some 3 safety looks too, because you can rotate all over the place, man. That's the dream.
Well, we've shared with you all our opinion of JaDon Blair and how we think this all came to be, but we wanted to hear it from JaDon and his family. And so as part of their big day, JaDon Blair and his family have made time to meet with us. And so they have now joined us. JaDon, you were there with your mom and dad, I believe.
Yes,
really
sir.
just want to first to begin say, man, we really appreciate you joining us today.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all for having me.
Well, hey, man, let's just get going. This is Notre Dame. It's been a long journey for you guys. I know mom and dad are probably ready to be not traveling here for a while. Could it just kind of sit at home? What's this been like for you, man, as you kind of go through this process? And now that you've got kind of your decision made, what's it like for you now that you've got your decision behind you?
Now that I got my decision behind me, finally I get to relax. But it was an extremely great process. I'm thankful for all the blessings that God have blessed me with, first and foremost. And I can't thank God enough. But now that I finally have committed to Notre Dame, it just feels right, man. It just feels like the best place that fits me. I trust in all the coaches and what they're doing, all the way from Coach Freeman, the head coach, and the way he cares about his players and wants his players to be successful or great in anything that they do, man. And that just took a toll on me, man. And I really love that about the program and how they're going to care for me off the field and on the field, of course. But not only are they going to care for me, but they're going to push me. They're going to be hard on me to be the best version of me. And I've seen that in the way that they coach. And that right there just all played a factor on why I chose Notre Dame and why I feel like they fit me just as much as I fit them.
JaDon, talk us through the process, because you had some tremendous options in front of you. I mean, obviously Florida State went 13-1 last year. Michigan's the defending champs. Penn State did a great job on you. I'm a Virginia guy, so I've always got love for Anthony Poindexter. I remember him as a player. You had a lot of great options, man, in front of you. So what were some of the things that you look at with this process and say, this is ultimately kind of what stood out about Notre Dame from a messaging standpoint? So you talked about the people involved, but like the message, because you obviously clearly have a great relationship with a lot of these coaching staffs. What was that message? What was the fit of those type of things that really ultimately kind of swung you towards having the fit? Because you can have faith in Coach Freeman and all that as people, but there clearly had to be some message that they were giving you that said, hey, this is why Notre Dame is the best place for me on and off the field.
Right, because like you're extremely right, because like I said, I've had great relationships with each coach at each program. I'm just being completely honest. You're right. I have faith in a lot of coaches in the next level to develop me and bring me to that NFL, my dream to get me there. But really what did it for me, Notre Dame, I've been to a lot of spring practices and I've been in a lot of meetings, and in all the meetings I try to pay attention, and even if they're super ahead into their playbook and just going on to the next thing, I still try to figure out what's going on and what calls mean and certain things mean. And just specifically at Notre Dame, I remember being in Coach Mickens' meeting and him challenging me, and also me picking up on to the way he's teaching it. I picked up on easiest to the way Coach Mickens was teaching the defense, and that right there was solidify me getting on the field early, because a lot of people who make it to the next level, which is college, have the athletic ability. They can play. Yeah, you're athletic, you're a good player, but it's not about that at that time. Yeah, you're going to have to pick up to the speed of the game, but how can you if you don't know the playbook, if you don't have the playbook memorized? And from being in Coach Mickens' meeting, from talking to Coach Al Golden, they taught it to me so easy, and it was so easy for me to understand and pick up on. I believe that I'll be able to play the fastest at Notre Dame and also get on the field early. And that right there just really played it for me.
You had an interesting journey too, JaDon. I'm gonna let Ryan jump in here in a second, but I wanted to speak to this because Ryan and I were talking about this before. The top schools on your list were kind of the top schools for a long time, but two of those three schools kind of went through some big changes in the offseason. Obviously, with Michigan staff being overhauled, actually all three of them to some degree. Obviously, with Chris O'Leary leaving Notre Dame, and then Manny Diaz leaving Penn State, and they get a new defensive coordinator. What was that like for you? Because it all happened within like a couple weeks of each other.
Yeah.
What was that process like for you?
I mean, it was a lot of different changes, and that's why we had to go back up and visit so many times, because we had to know these people, man. We was like, we got to know who these people are. We got to know what I'm getting myself into if I commit to that school. Like, for example, when Manny Diaz left to go to Duke, I had to go back up to Penn State to figure out who that guy was, and I love the defensive coordinator up there now, man. Do I believe he could develop me to one of the best safeties in the nation? I truly do, but I just, like I said, I just feel like Notre Dame the best fit for me. And Michigan, Harbaugh leaving, going to the Chargers now, and Coach Sharon Moore. Do I love Coach Sharon Moore? I surely do. And I have a great relationship with him. I most certainly do. I love everything that Michigan's doing, but like I said, Notre Dame, I feel, has the best, just the best opportunities for me to be myself and be great. And Notre Dame, with Coach O'Leary leaving, you're right that my three-way tie was changing back and forth. When Coach O'Leary left, Notre Dame dropped like just tremendously for me. And that's just because I didn't know the type of guy Coach Mickens was. I didn't know the way he coaches. I didn't know the way he was going to teach me. But when I went back up and I got to talk to him, just the first time ever talking to him, it was all smiles, and that's my type of personality. Just a guy like that, that's going to teach it to me, that's going to love me, that's going to have fun with me, but also when the times come to lock in and you got to be great, you got to go make the plays, he's going to be on me, he's going to expect that from me. And that just right there solidified, especially why Notre Dame, I feel best with them.
JaDon, congratulations, man, and happy birthday. You're getting old now, brother. 17.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Well, JaDon, I wanted to ask because I know, again, you have mom and dad there. You did this at Mount Tabor around Coach Brown, your teammates, other coaches, your community there. How much did it mean for you to be around that support system? I know they've been vital to helping you navigate the recruiting process. What was today like being able to share this moment with all of them?
I mean, I'm forever blessed and grateful for my teammates, my parents, my girlfriend, her grandparents coming out to see me commit. That just shows how much love and the support system I have and the people who surrounded me, man. It just shows how much that they love me and want to see me do better and be great at the next level. Just seeing my coaches cheering on for me and the excitement and them believing in me and just giving me the recognition of me as a leader on the team. And it's just I'm thankful for all of it. And just to have this support from from the group of people that decide to show up is extremely amazing. And I'm forever grateful for them. And this is who I do it for. My family, the people who support me, that's just who I do it for. That's why I'm grinding so hard. That's what I think about when I'm like, I gotta make it. And it's just a blessing, man.
What's the plans now for the rest of the day for the birthday? Parents taking you out to dinner? What you guys got planned?
Yeah, we're gonna go out to dinner. Might eat a little bit. Celebrate.
Hey, hold on right quick. I got D Ham on the phone. I got Cal's dad just called me on the phone right quick.
No way.
Away.
Okay.
Y'all handle that.
Okay.
D Ham, what up, baby?
I wanted to ask a question for mom. I was going to ask mom and dad, but for mom, like when you guys went through this process, what role did you try to adopt to try to help steer him in a direction as far as what to look for, but not necessarily steer him in a direction to a specific school? So kind of what was the role that you felt that you kind of adopted for yourself to say, hey, how do I help him make the decision for him, but also make sure that I'm challenging him and make sure he's thinking through all the complexities that go into this kind of decision?
Right. I always wanted to sit down and talk about the pros and cons of each school, make sure that he stayed on track with long-term instead of short-term gratification, long-term gratification. Because, a lot of things, he's a teenage boy, so a lot of things he can make the decision off of the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to keep steering him back on the right track with that. Wanting him to make sure that, this is going to be one of the hardest things he's ever tried to do, play football at this level in college. So you want to make sure that the school, the environment, and the coaching staff, the support staff, you enjoy all of that in addition to the football, because it's going to be a lot of adversity. It's going to be a lot of ups and downs. So you got to have something else, when you kind of lower the psyche that can help you get back on track with all of that.
What did you learn about your son going through this process? Like, what did you learn about his ability to wade through such a impactful decision with the type of people that were coming after him?
Way more mature than I thought. Seeing him blossom through all of this, and I learned a lot. A lot of new things about.
I can see that proud mama smile. That's what I'm seeing right now. See that proud mama smile. I love it. Mr. Blair, for you too. Also, you kind of went through this process on a different scale, but you kind of went through. You played college football and things along those lines. What were you able to do to help kind of guide him through this process as well? To ask his mom is, it's not that you're steering him towards a decision in like, hey, I want you to go to Notre Dame.
Right.
But you're steering him to the decision, hey, here's how this process is going to go, to make sure that he was being guided through it to where he could, at the end of the day, sit down and say, I'm making the best decision for me with as much of the important information that as I have. Right.
So this decision right here is going to be the precipice of all the major decisions that he makes in his life. Mm-hmm. So as his dad, I really took my time and allowed him to feel some of it. And then when I thought that that it was maybe getting a little heavy, I just talked to him. One thing I do with my boys and my girls at that is we talk, right? So I talk to him, and I will always bring it up in a cavalier manner. Not, hey, son, what you thinking about going? No. What you thinking about this? How you feel about that? Well, what if this takes place, right? So, and then what that did was, that helped him go back to his notes that he takes and the notes that my wife takes on all the visits, all the people we meet, taking that information and make the best decision for him based off that information. Because that's what decisions are for you from now and going forward. You have to take the information you're presented with, disseminate it, and make the best decision for you.
JaDon, if I could ask, because I remember talking to you early on in the recruiting process before you had ever even visited Notre Dame, and I knew Notre Dame had a high opinion of you at that time, and I think you liked Notre Dame as well. But can you talk to me about the first moment you guys went up to South Bend on an unofficial visit and what feeling you got when you first got on campus? Because a lot of people describe it as just kind of a different atmosphere. How big was that first visit for you, and what do you feel when you set foot on South Bend?
That first visit that I took up to South Bend was just amazing. I loved everything that everybody did. Chad, Mickens, O'Leary was there at the time. O'Leary as well. Coach Al Golden, and Freeman just showed me so much love on my first time up there. Made me feel like I've been up there multiple times, and just what we did and the meetings we had and the talks that we had, the conversations that we had, all felt so real. And I just loved everything about them, man. Just what they presented at Notre Dame, the things they had lined up for me and the way they could use me. Just that first time being up there and I getting to see it, I was just like, wow, man, this is Notre Dame. Like, not everybody gets to visit a place like this, and not everybody is blessed enough. And I'm not going to say blessed enough, but not everybody has those same opportunities as me to visit Notre Dame. And it was Be Real, man. And I love the experience my first time going up there. And still now, man, I still love going up with Notre Dame. And that's why I feel like that's where the best place that I can be. Because every time I go up there, it's a great feeling. Like they always said, for a person making their commitment, you're going to feel it inside of you. And when I prayed to God and I prayed, of course, I had doubts. But after that, talking to my parents, and I just felt like it was the best decision to be. And every time I go up there, it felt like home. It felt like family. So that's just what I chose.
I think it's so funny, JaDon, if I could ask a different question because, your dad just took a call with Kyle Hamilton's dad, right? So, you guys have a personal relationship with that family. Yeah. At 6'4", 190 plus pounds, that's going to be the guy that Notre Dame fans are going to just compare you to off the bat, just from the size perspective. How important was Kyle and the family in this one? Did you guys chew their brain on this? Did you ask questions? Like, how important was the Hamilton family for you guys?
Oh, yeah, I definitely got to talk to Kyle Hamilton and his dad, and just why they chose up Notre Dame and why they chose to go there. Because Kyle Hamilton was a 5-star recruit, way higher recruit than I am, and extremely talented. And I hope to be as good as him. I believe I will be, and I believe I can be better. But I just haven't did what he's done yet, man. He's a Pro Bowler in the NFL, had a great career at Notre Dame. Dude's a legend over there, and I'm glad I'm being compared to him. I truly feel blessed and just honored to be compared to a guy like that. But I haven't did nothing yet in the Notre Dame jersey. But best believe I will. I'm not saying that I want. I will. But just I have to live up to those expectations and exceed those expectations like I have been doing for my whole life. And just like I said, talking to Kyle Hamilton and D-Mac, getting me those connections and building those relationships with other guys. I even got to talk to Mendoza, and I was just like, wow, like these guys really want me here extremely bad. And the connections that I have already, just the business school owner, all of that, it's extremely great.
JaDon, I'm going to ask a similar question to Ryan's, but from a different angle, because obviously people, 6'4" kid playing safety, the first thing people are going to say is, oh, well, he's going to move down to linebacker at some point in time, right? I know you've heard that before. Yeah. How impactful was it for you from a football standpoint to be able for Marcus Freeman to say, hey, here's what my defense looks like with a 6'4" rangy safety? Because they're not going to, in theory, they're not doing it. They're not drawing it up on film. Marcus Freeman's showing you his defense from 2021 with that type of player. So not even just the comparisons to what Kyle achieved, but just the style of play. How did that factor at all, or was it important that you could actually look and say, okay, I can not only visualize their plan, but I can see it in place? Because even though you guys have a little bit different games, they've shown me that, hey, 6'4" doesn't mean linebacker. 6'4" means, hey, impactful, rangy safety. Did that factor at all into kind of how you viewed Notre Dame?
Yeah, you're right. That definitely did play a factor in it. Because Coach Al Golden and is the defensive coordinator now, and Coach Mickens is the DB coach. But a lot of people don't know Coach Freeman was the defensive coordinator when Kyle was there, and now he's the head coach. He's not going to move me. He's going to believe in my ability to get better, to learn the plays, to make fast plays. He's going to believe in my ability to stay at safety. He's not going to try to move me. He's not going to try to be like, we can try to see you here, maybe come off the edge, maybe outside linebacker. He's never told me. He's never brung up linebacker to me, never, ever in this whole recruiting process. Strictly safety, strictly playing post, coming down in the alley, sometimes covering those tight ends like you guys said. And that's why I have a lot of faith in Coach Freeman and what he's doing.
So JaDon, I have a sorry, Bryan, if I could I have a very silly question for you, but I think it's something that people want to know, okay? There's a lot of great basketball players in the 2025 class, okay? Mark Zachary, Matty Augustine, Deuce Knight. I know you're a baller as well. My question is, who's the best basketball player in the 2025 recruiting class?
Bro, me, bro. I don't care, bro. We can only want anybody, man. They better ask Chad how I did him, bro. Yeah, and I'm putting Chad on the spot, man. Straight 3 balls on that dude, bro.
Well, fortunately, you guys have some 6'7", 6'8" guys on the O-line that you can throw the ball down to in the post, so that'll work a little bit too. I want to ask this, and we'll wrap up. I know you guys got a lot going on, but I did want to ask this from a football standpoint. When you look at how Notre Dame uses the safeties, because they do trigger them so much downhill as well as playing over top.
Exactly.
Do you feel like that fits your game? Because, I mean, I watch your film, and we're going to do that with the audience when you guys leave, and there's times you're playing center field. There's times you're coming down into the box, or sometimes you're filling the outside alleys, and then you are a guy that they can bring down on a pass rush situation, not as an edge rusher, but they'll trigger the safety on a pressure. Like, do you feel like Notre Dame's defense fits sort of the versatility that you have in your game, that you don't have to move to linebacker to be able to come down and impact the run game? You can do that as a safety. Is that something that you think fits your game pretty well?
Yeah.
I know I do. I just kind of explained everything I do. But do you think that fits you as well?
Yeah, that definitely does fit my game, me personally. Like you said, coming downhill, running through the alley, going to the post, covering the tight ends, that's what I already do. And I've been to practices. I've been to spring practices at Notre Dame. I see how they safeties play already. Some of them are in the post, some running through the alleys, some are literally at the line of scrimmage and drop all the way deep. Just the way they disguise it. And I believe I can be used in that same exact way, not if better. Like, I could be used better in that program and the way that Coach Al Golden is running his defense. And I truly believe that the way he has it set up, I will exceed all the expectations and excel in that type of defense.
So, Mr. and Mrs. Blair, I think you guys need to send some IOUs to Chris O'Leary, Manny Diaz, and Coach Harbaugh for them having to make you guys take all those extra trips. But do you feel, JaDon, do you think all that, though, all those trips, I mean, for whatever reason, do you feel like that helped you when you made this decision? There's no what ifs. You feel like you had enough to where there's no looking over my shoulder, well, man, but what if type of situation?
So it made it easier, but it also made it harder, if that makes sense. And I'm not saying hard as in like, I don't know where to go, I don't know, but I'm saying harder as in the more I went up to each of these schools, the better my personal relationship got with each of these coaches. And it's hard telling a coach that you built a great relationship with, I'm sorry, coach, I'm not going to be able to come to your school. I love you and I love what you're doing, but I'm not going to be able to come there. And that's just a tough conversation that you have to have as a part of being a man. And I just had to take that all in. But like I said, I just felt like Notre Dame was just really the best for me. And that's why I went back up so many times. And that's why I went up to some other schools like Michigan, Penn State, went up to Florida State as well this in June. But all these schools that I went up to, I built great relationship with each coach, man. And they all feel like family. But like I said, Notre Dame just feels a little bit better to me. And not even a little bit, a lot better to me. And it just was in my gut, and that's what I went with.
Well, I just, can I say one thing in the sense of, and there's no question here, okay? JaDon, you are one of the more well-spoken young men that we've ever had on this channel, and I want to send a huge congratulations to Mrs. Blair and Jay. You guys have done a tremendous job, and I'm just so happy for you guys.
And that's
really
saying something, because we've had some very impressive young men on this channel for sure. JaDon, so we're going to let you guys go. We appreciate you coming on. Happy birthday as well. What's your last message you want to leave to Notre Dame fans? Because you got a lot of them watching. They're excited. They're all fired up in the chat. What's your message to Notre Dame fans right now?
Hey, I'm coming. See me in December, man. Just know you're going to get a dog on the field, and just not off the field. We don't even got to speak about on the field, because that's going to show. But off the field, man, I'm going to be a great guy, man. You're going to love being around me. I'm going to put a smile on your face. Anytime I can talk to you, I will, as long as it's not game time, because that's when I'm locked in. But Other than that, man, I'm never going to act Hollywood to nobody. Always going to show a great amount of love and just any autographs, anything that people want. I'm going to be able to do it because the coach is going to have to tell me to leave. It's time to go because, I mean, fans and the support of fans is really what makes people go harder. And just the support from fans and them uplifting me because, you know, they might not know what's going on in the personal life, but just those compliments from fans and them believing in me, it's just something that's great. And I believe that would make me go even harder. And, you know, just that right there, you're going to get an extremely great guy. You're going to love being around me, and the team's going to love being around me and expecting another leader at Notre Dame. And I hope to fulfill those shoes of being a leader because I know college and high school are completely different, but I feel that I will be a great leader at the next level as well.
That right there is what the Blair brand is all about. You guys talk about that. It's about the brand, and that's what people have to understand about why you're a fit at Notre Dame. It's because you understand that being a great college football player is just not about being a great college football player on Saturday. It's about you represent your school and your family and how you conduct yourself off of it, and that's exactly what it's all about. Jay, Mr. and Mrs. Blair, appreciate y'all so much for being on with us today. And again, congratulations and happy birthday.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
All right, guys.
Now you guys get it now, right? I mean, you guys get why we kept saying he's a Notre Dame kid. He's a Notre Dame kid. He's a Notre Dame kid. You guys see it.
Yep.
They see it, Ryan.
Yeah. No, I mean, he's incredibly well spoken for his age. I mean, some of these Notre Dame kids, man, like they make me a little bit jealous, to be honest, because I feel like I often come back to the fact of like me at 17, I would not be able to talk
He
like they
just
do.
turned 17 today,
Yes.
Ryan.
Yes.
That means he went through this entire process over the last year as a 16-year-old.
Right.
I look back to when I was that age, no way. I'd have been able
No,
to be
no
on
chance.
camera answering questions like that. And
No.
and then his mom talks and you're like, oh yeah, I get it. And then his dad talks and you're like, yeah, oh, I get it. Right. It's about that support system. And he certainly has an outstanding support system. And they've been through this before. I mean, his older sister just graduated college like a month ago. Right. I mean, so this is a family that's kind of been through this a little bit before, but you guys hear it. I mean, you understand why he gets it. And I love the fact that he talked about how this is a tough decision in some ways, because this is what I got from it, Ryan. You tell me if I'm reading this wrong. It was not a hard decision to go Notre Dame. It was a hard decision to tell Penn State and Michigan he wasn't coming there, right? Because this is what people need to understand. Well, why doesn't this recruit stop talking to those coaches? That's exactly why. Because you did develop this great relationship. And I won't be shocked if in 3 years or 4 years when he goes to the National Football League, we come to find out that him and Anthony Poindexter kept the relationship. Not to try to convince him to come to Penn State, but just because there's a genuine care for that people don't understand. Sometimes don't think they understand how that connection builds during the recruiting process. When you've been talking to this coach for 2 years, you may go to another school, but that doesn't mean that you didn't have that great connection with that coaching staff and that there wasn't a genuine care for that young man and for the young man for the coaching staff. And I think he gave great reverence and showed respect to those other schools in how he explained how this process went down. And that was impressive.
Well, I would say this is that we had a good feeling that this was not a situation where JaDon had silently committed and but we had a good feeling that Notre Dame was going to be the pick for a very long time at this point. But despite that, he wanted to play out the rest of the process. I don't think it was because he had second thoughts about if Notre Dame was the best school for him. It was simply, you heard what's important to him. Relationships are important. People are important into this decision. So yes, he gave Michigan every chance. He gave Penn State every chance. He gave South Carolina every chance. He gave Florida State every chance. He is a young man that did not shortchange this process. Right. He let people build relationships. They build relationships with each other. And in the end, it was about who has the best relationship with him and who presents the best opportunity to him. In the end, that was Notre Dame.
And when you you give the kid the floor, what's the thing you want to tell Notre Dame fans about? He doesn't talk about, he briefly mentions, I'm a dog. And then it goes into, and you know who that answer was for? That's an answer for mom and dad as well, because that's the thing that they've been constantly emphasizing to him. Like, hey, this isn't just about football, right? Football is a big part of this, obviously. But this goes well beyond that. And what's the time he got most excited is when he was talking about Tom Mendoza. Did you see his face? We started talking about meeting Tom Mendoza.
Yeah.
Right. Why? Is that going to help him be a better football player? Not at all. Because
JaDon
understands
money down the road.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to this than just playing football on Saturdays. That's obviously a big part of it. but it's about building up that brand beyond just football. And JaDon understands that, and you can tell he's got very good guidance, and that's
Great
always
family.
impressive.
Great family.
Great
Really
family.
is. Yeah.
So, Ryan, we're going to transition out of the interview with JaDon Blair, and let's talk a little bit of football now. So we had a chance to meet with him, and people got to see what kind of player he is. But now let's kind of it's our turn to give our thoughts on what kind of player JaDon Blair is, and at the end of the day, what we're going to show you guys, this is an outstanding football player that really combines all of it, Ryan. And I said this in my class Impact. Yeah, it's great that you're tall and long and you can cover a lot of ground and you're athletic, but to be a great player at the next level, you also have to have the mind for the game.
Yes.
And this is a young man that really has the total package as a football player at safety.
He does. And I think that the best thing about him is that when you're 6'4" and 190 pounds and can run the way he does and can transition and be rangy the way he can, it's easy for a player to just rest on athleticism, right? To just be a guy that can just win strictly off of getting from point A to point B, even if you're a tick slow on from a reactionary position, because he's such a good athlete that he can make up for that. And he has such long limbs and he's so rangy and all those types of things. But I think that the thing that separates JaDon Blair, in my opinion, is you see the instinctual nature that he plays with. And when you combine instincts with athleticism and range, that turns into a potentially great football player. Because there have been a lot of players historically, this isn't Notre Dame centric, this is everybody centric, that have made plays on the college and NFL level based upon just being more athletic than just about everybody else that's on the field with them. But the difference between a kid like this and the ordinary player is that he's a worker, man. He is going to work his butt off. He's going to be in the film room. I talked to his head coach at Mount Tabor, Coach Brown, who talked about that he is the most studious player that he has on his roster. Like, this isn't just show up, make plays, go home. This is let's come in for extra film room. Let's be there at 5 a.m. on the field and see what the eye discipline is versus different route combinations. Like, all those things together is what separates him, is that this isn't just a freaky athlete. This is a freaky athlete that has a great head on his shoulder and has a great eye for the game.
Let's dive into the film, Ryan, and we're gonna go over JaDon's film now. I'll say this too as we get into him. One thing that the athleticism was obvious on his sophomore film. Yep. The other part, as a junior, as a sophomore, he was a great athlete that was a good football player. Because of the athleticism, as a junior, he became an outstanding football player because the athleticism combined with the intelligence and the feel for the game, and started doing the little things well also. But the first thing you see when you're watching JaDon Blair, Ryan, is this is a young man that can flat out run and hit. Yes. I mean, this kid covers a ton of ground.
I also love the fact that he broke his film down into alley play, coverage reps. It's like this kid
alley play in the box cover. Yes. I mean, like, it's like he understands, like, it's not run defense, pass defense. It's alley, box support. Like, and then he starts talking about it in the interview. Like, he understands the multifaceted nature to being a modern safety.
Yep.
It is impressive, but man, he's like getting 10 yards in like 3-4 steps at the most. Covers so much ground.
I love him in the alley, especially because when you're talking about playing inside out, range and length are so important to play in space, but also in how the game is played today. I mean, you're going to see stuff like this where you're going to try to get to a corner as a running back, but then you're going to see bubble screens. You're going to see, just kind of flat routes. Like, they're going to RPO game. Like, they're going to try to get the ball out in the perimeter a ton in space. We always talk about this being a space game. This kid, as a player that can work from depth, work from a large area of the field to short area of the field coming downhill, like, this kid can cover a lot of ground and close gap in a hurry. This is, and I talked about Devonta Smith already in the 2020 game, right? This was the type of player that was missing on the other side of Kyle Hamilton, another kid that can come downhill, close ground, and tackle in space. That's what this kid brings to the game. You'll see that he's not afraid to stick. He's not afraid to get his shoulder involved, but the range that he has working from middle of the field to the sideline is one of the most impressive areas of his game.
No question, right? And you just went through a 3-period stretch or a 3-play stretch where JaDon went from basically on the second level, pre-snap, flying inside out, to coming from depth, backpedal, then coming from depth, and then another play where he basically just starts from depth and then comes down. And in each time you see a guy that you say just covers so much ground in a hurry and makes himself hard to block. And then a couple plays later, you see a situation where he's using good block destruction and you see that length. And then this one right here, this is a great play because he understands I'm the force player. So I've got to take a high angle to where I can't let this guy get outside of me. And so he's got inside help. That, again, shows that intelligence. It's not just flying downhill and blowing up the running back. It's flying downhill and making sure you have a proper angle of attack to make sure that if you miss, you're missing where you're sending him back into the help instead of sending him, outside where you've got no help. And those are aspects of it too, is where it's also about the athleticism. Yes. The length. Yes. But it's also a young man that also has intelligence. This clip right here is important, Ryan, because you can see the clean pedal here, heads on the swivel. You see him looking left to right. He's getting a read of the defense, and watch how quickly he plants and drives downhill. This Ryan right here might be the one clip that shows the most unique aspect of why he can play on the back end, and he's not a kid that's going to grow into a second-level players, because linebackers don't do this. Safeties do.
They do not. Yeah. No, and it's so unique and it's so different, right? Like a lot of guys that are high school safeties, as we're eventually going to transition to linebacker, like they're good laterally exploding, one way or the other, but that plant and drive out of a pedal downhill, that's hard for a lot of linebackers, right? Because they're usually a little bit more packed below, and they're usually guys that have a little trouble changing direction on that steep of an angle. This young man's loose. Like, that's the best way that someone said smooth in the chat. I think smooth, looseness, like this is a very nimble athlete. This is not a tightly wound physical athlete. Like, this is a smooth kid. Like, this is not a kid that is he's powerful. Don't get me wrong. And he's going to get more powerful as he adds weight to his frame. But he is a smooth kid. Like, you could tell that he's always been playing on the back end. He's not a second level kid. He can play it at times because of the role that he's going to play at safety. But overall, this is a kid that can absolutely play from depth. And that's what makes him so rare. A 6'4", 190-pound kid. I'll give you an example, Brian. Like the Gabriel Williams kid that ended up going to like Maryland or something like that. I forget. Or actually, Virginia Tech he ended up going to. I liked Gabriel Williams. He was about the same size as JaDon. He's about 6'4", 200 pounds. But he was a kid that you knew was going to be a rover linebacker eventually because he was not nimble. He was explosive. Right. There's a big difference. This kid is smooth and nimble and can plant and drive and can change direction. That's what makes him such a unique athlete.
No question, Ryan. And that's such an important part. Like back in the day, 30 years ago, you could be a safety that could just come down and knock people's heads off. You could be a Steve Atwater type of player, right? I mean, the guy that I grew up loving. In today's game, if you're going to really be a part of an elite defense, you need guys that can do a little bit of everything, because you were kind of getting to this earlier, Ryan, is you're seeing a kid that right now, if you're just watching this film, you're thinking, well, this kid's an alley safety. This kid's a downhill box safety. And because of the way he broke his film down. But wait till we get to the coverage part, right? But the other thing too, Ryan, that you see from this film is he's not a kid that comes – he knows when I got to fly downhill as fast as I can and when I got to come down with some control, when I'm the support player.
Balance.
Right. Yeah. Hey, I'm the guy that I got to clean it up in case everything bad happens. And if I come out of control with a proper run fit, improper run fit, we're going to be in trouble. So that ability to play smart as well as instinctive – you see that feel for the game. Now is when it gets fun. Now you get to watch the coverage stuff.
And if I could say one thing about coming to balance, because I always talk about that as a run defender, coming to balance basically means that when you're in space and you're about to get close to a tackle, that's the ability to settle down and to be able to coil your hips through a ball carrier. A lot of guys are not athletic enough and aren't loose enough that they have to come in and they're out of control and they're not able to gain their balance in their hips. He is a player that is so athletic and so gifted. He gets to a spot and he's able to come to balance as a player so that he's not going to miss tackles. He's not going to lunge in space. That's the thing that separates him. But like that play right there, Brian, like he's playing too high, right? And we're working against an outside vertical. And again, we're talking about a 6'4", 190-pound kid. This is cover 2 here where he ranges all the way to the sideline.
The ball comes off out of the quarterback's hand. He's on the hash.
Yep.
And he takes a couple, few steps, and he's not only that, he's like almost waiting on the ball when it gets there. You know what I mean? Like, and the reason I went back is because these are two completely different plays right here, right? Yep. This is one where he's basically, you're near the red zone, you're essentially playing man. This isn't actually a great clip. He actually falls for a little bit of an outside move there and gets his hips turned a little bit. But watch how easily he recovers and gets downhill, Ryan, and then plays the route perfectly.
For a game winner, too.
Right. We're in the red zone. Why you don't go over top? A lot of guys in this situation, they get in trouble like this. They either go downhill too quickly, or most likely they kind of, oh shoot, and they got to recover over top. And he doesn't. He stays within what he's being taught. And then a play later, we're watching him play cover 2 and he's getting off the top of the hash. And then, so that's the thing, Ryan, is you do need a guy that can do a lot of that in this defense. So that way Notre Dame can afford to being forced into field boundary all the time. Well, you're the boundary guy because this is all you can do. Notre Dame couldn't put DJ Brown in the field last year. Just wasn't something that they could do. With JaDon, you can. I mean, you see him playing field boundary. This is on a little bit of a sloppy field, but a nice clean cut right there. Reads the quarterback perfectly, jumps in front of the ball. Like that's not an incredibly athletic play. That's an incredibly instinctive play.
Yes.
He's reading it.
Very instinctive, but then you see the athleticism pop off, obviously, when you see the 6'4" guy return this one for a pick 6, right? Where you're like, yeah, he can move a little bit. He's doing all right. He's doing
easy.
All right
he's got that, Ryan, you and I will say this, it's easy speed.
Yes.
It's not high exertion. It's like he's got that really easy speed.
And he's timed in like the low 4.5s. Like he's been 4.51 to 4.54 somewhere in the ballpark. But like, again, it doesn't take a lot of effort for him to move that fast. He just is one of those kids that's just kind of, it's that long stride, right? So it makes it look like he's not as fast as he actually is, but he glides when he gets into the open field. Absolutely glides.
Here's another play, Ryan, where you talk about this isn't about his athletic skills as much. I mean, it is. Look, that's great balance and get down. But this is a smart football play because what are most juniors in high school thinking right here? Slant route. I'm laying someone out.
Yep.
I'm coming down 100 miles an hour.
Later.
He will
later.
Right. But on this particular play, he's got that field awareness to know, like you talked about, the patience. Hey, I'm not going to lay this kid out. I've got to come to balance and play this route. And then that allows him to be in position to go pick the football off.
Yep.
And that's that thing you talk about. Now here's another one, Ryan. This one is, you've got, let's look at this one down right now. So let's break it down. Okay. So you've got 4 up top here, right? You got 5, 6, 7 here, 8, 9, 10, 11. You're playing quarters. Maybe you're rolling to some sort of cover 1, sometime a hybrid coverage, but he is playing the slot. So this is what we talked about. He does a little bit of everything. Nice, clean, easy pedal. And then you watch him play the football with that length.
Yeah.
Like
he does left arm flash in there with the pass breakup with the length that he has. Yeah, it's impressive.
Yep. And now here's one where it's like, okay, I got to get downhill and hit this guy. And he does. Right, because that's his job. That is his role because he's playing over top of number 3 in a 3x1. And
that's the craziest part is that like he has power through his frame, but like this kid's going to get a lot bigger, man. Like he's only 190 pounds. He's probably 180 something pounds in this film. He's like 190, 195 now. He's probably 180 something pounds as a junior. Just imagine when this kid's 205. 210 and he can really strike because like he's got pop in his hips
through this one. Like this was huge too, Ryan. He rips his whole at first I thought, oh, that's targeting, but then you go back and watch it and he throws his shoulder into the ball. It's not his head. He throws his shoulder into it. Now he'll want to not put his head down. That'll be something you teach him. But the instinctiveness of I'm not going for him. He's going for a big shot there, but he goes through that guy's outside shoulder, puts his shoulder right through the football. And it's a turnover for your football team. And he's just around the ball a ton. That's the thing you see when you watch him play. He doesn't get thrown at very often. That's why his numbers aren't like crazy, but it's like he's making an impact on the football every time. Look how easy, clean, plants his feet, gets downhill, and he's just 2 steps and he's there and he breaks the pass up.
It's crazy too because like he plays against a pretty good classification in North Carolina, but yet he's so much bigger than everyone. It's just absolutely insane to see him with like that range on that play is just like it's wild, man. Just the amount of ground that he covers in like a split second. I mean, he's one of those kids where you blink an eye and you might miss something incredible. He's one of that type of kid.
The other thing too, Ryan, is depending on what safety position he plays, but really both safeties will do this. One will play more than the other. But Notre Dame does a lot of stuff where they'll show too high. Like this particular play, I think they start off with the 2 high low. When I mean 2 high, I'm not talking cover 2. I'm thinking there's 2 safeties back, right? Now they can do a lot of things out of this. What Notre Dame will do a lot with their safeties is they'll get to a cover 1. And this is what I want to point out that makes him so impressive and such a great fit for Notre Dame is because we know he can play over the top. Ryan, you pointed out on that cover 2 clip is that's exactly the similar type of thing with that long range playing center field, playing over top. But Notre Dame also does a lot of things where one of those guys will roll deep and the other guy will kind of come underneath and play sort of, he's got to patrol that middle of the field area. And that's what DJ Brown did last year on that ball he should have intercepted against Ohio State. Now you put a kid who's 6'4" and ranging athletic patrolling that part of the zone, and now all of a sudden the middle of the field for Notre Dame's defense becomes a lot harder to throw the ball into. And that's something that you look into is that's when we talk about he can do a lot of different things. Well, practically this is what we're talking about, right? Is that example of a guy that will be from here and how quickly he can drive on crossers, drive on seams, drive on those type of over routes and things like that he's going to be doing while coming not just downhill against the run, but coming downhill and playing sort of that stacked single high, where the one safety goes to the middle and the other guy kind of comes down underneath and sort of like a Rob type look. That's something that JaDon's also going to thrive at very well on both roles, right? Playing that deep center fielder, but then also coming downhill and doing a lot of stuff like this.
Yeah. Well, on that play too, you can see that he opened up his hips on a 45-degree angle to the sideline, but then when he saw the underneath crosser, he's able to stick his foot in the ground and come downhill on the previous one, actually. Mm-hmm. And I think that one, like that just illustrates, again, the rareness of, we're not talking about a kid that is just a downhill linear player. We're talking about a kid that can change direction and that can drive down on the football, which again is adds to the rareness of the talents and the athlete.
Yeah. We're just going to let you guys have some fun with this offensive film here as we continue to talk about them. And I think what you see from here, Ryan, is from this film, what a great catch that was. But what you guys all saw from the film is this is not a typical what we would have thought 10, 15 years ago when you see a 6'4" safety. Like, okay, which linebacker spot are you going to move him to? Right. Like, or Notre Dame's had some really tall safeties. I remember Benny Gilbo was, I think, around 6'3". Jarvis Edison was 6'4" back in the day. But they were what you talked about, Ryan. They were downhill thumpers. Mm-hmm. They were guys that in today's game would be playing. Benny Gilbo, if he played in Notre Dame now, would be a rover. He wouldn't have been a safety like he was back then. This is a kid that is a pass game weapon, not just a run downhill, stop the run. I do think he helps your run defense be better. There's no doubt. He's long, he's athletic, he takes good angles, he can hit. And as you mentioned, Ryan, imagine what he's going to do in a couple of years in a college strength program against the run, right? But you're also seeing the athleticism that this is a guy that's going to impact the pass game as well. And that's huge if you want to have a truly elite secondaries. You have to have safeties that can make an impact. And when you start thinking about, what Notre Dame had in the secondary last year and how good they were with Benjamin Morrison and Cam Hart and Xavier Watts, imagine how much better it would be if you had an even bigger impact player at safety. And I love DJ Brown, and I'm not trying to throw shade at DJ, but like a better athlete, a longer athlete picks that. DJ's 6 feet tall, right? Ball hit the top of his fingers. What if he's 6'4"? You know what I mean? That's a clear pick. That's an easy pick, much easier interception. And that's the kind of thing you talk about is why it's so important to land those truly difference maker athletes across the board. So not, hey, our 2 can hang with your 2, but your number 2 safety is maybe not be that kind of guy. This is the kind of kid that really brings that all around package. And I want you to respond to this too, Ryan, as a defensive guy, how important it is for a defensive coordinator to have safeties that are interchangeable in the modern game.
I mean, you have to have it nowadays. I mean, because it's so easy now. Like if I'm just in a 4-2-5 alignments where I have a rover out there and I have 2 safeties that are a field and a boundary safety, it's so easy to manipulate things now with trading and motions and different formations. Like you can get guys into improper positions. And I think that the days of having, I want to rid my mind of free and strong safety. I want to rid my mind of like those super stereotypes because I believe that people still think free safety, play from the roof, single high. They think of strong safety, lumbering body, needs to play in the box. We need to get away from that. We need to get rid of that, get rid of the terminology in today's game because yes, some teams still have to hold to that because they can't recruit to the level that you need them to. But at a place like Notre Dame with what they're recruiting at safety now, the interchangeableness that you need to have on the back end with the space game that people play today, you can't get caught in a precarious position because you don't have a guy that can roll. You don't have a guy that can roll to the middle field. You don't have a guy that can come down and play the alley. You need guys that can do a little bit of everything. And I think, again, if we're talking about the interchangeableness that is in the 2025 class, JaDon Blair can play either safety spot, and he can play in the slot at times against a bigger body receiver. Ethan Long can do a lot of those same things, a lot of those variables. He's just a little bit of a shorter athlete compared to JaDon Blair. And then you have Ivan Taylor that can play in the slot all the time. He can play either safety spot potentially as well. You have found 3 guys. Yes, interchangeableness is a word.
100%.
Checking
Football
in.
word, heck yeah, it is.
Yeah,
Heck
it is.
yeah, it is.
100%.
Ryan, like Ivan Taylor to me reminds me a lot of Xavier Watts in the body type, the different type of things he can do, right? And Xavier could be interchangeable in this defense if you had a guy that could do what he does in the other safety spot, and they didn't. That's why they really stuck true for the most part to field boundary last year, because you didn't have that aspect of hey, you can't put DJ Brown to the field very often where he's got to cover that much space. Now, all 3 of those guys, I'm comfortable playing the field spot. And honestly, all 3 of those guys, Ethan's going to need some time in the weight room to be that downhill kind of guy. He's got the ability, like he's got the instincts, he's got the willingness. He's actually a pretty good tackler from a form technique standpoint. He's just got to get stronger, right? I mean, so does Ivan, but they're all willing tacklers to the point where there's not a single kid in that trio that you look at and say, he's got to play. Those other 2 are interchangeable, but that guy, he's got to be boundary, or that guy, he's got to be field. And JaDon would be the one normally you'd be worried about, right? The 6'4", 190 guy, but the fact that he's not just makes it it's perfect.
Well, I think that's where corner is going too. Like, I know that, again, we love the boundary versus field corner, and there's going to be designations that maybe fit better into a specific player. But I look at Dallas Golden, I'm like, that kid can play boundary, he can play field, he can play nickel. Cool. Mark Zachary, probably more of a field, but like as he gets bigger and stronger, I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up as a boundary at some point in his career. And then Cree Thomas, field guy that can also play safety at times too, right? So you have guys. There's not one player in the secondary that I don't think could at least play 2 different spots in the secondary. Some of them can play 3 to 4 different positions in the secondary. That's how impressive this class is.
It's so huge, Ryan. It's so big. Here's we're going to wrap it up with this, Mr. Roberts. We're going to kind of wrap it up with a what's next. And here's the reality. It's July 5th, and Notre Dame just wrapped up a 6-man secondary class that's as good as anybody in the country, which means now Mike Mickens gets an early start on the 2026 class. And it's already a very impressive group of corners and safeties. There's no doubt about it.
Well, I mean, it's great now that JaDon's on board too. Obviously, people will keep asking about Ivan Taylor, and I totally get it, right? But now the perspective is keep a lot of your attention on Ivan. Make sure he's solid. Make sure you do everything you need to do to keep him solid in this class. And then maybe, hey, Brandon Logan, who would come as a baseball scholarship guy that would also be a walk-on on the football team, at least initially. Maybe you keep talking to him and try to get him in the class at some point as well. But regardless, all your attention now is just keeping the band together. And then when you look forward to 2026, again, the article I wrote, Notre Dame is in position with several big-time safeties in the 2026 class. Hats off to Mike Mickens for not only solidifying JaDon Blair, his first big commitment, first commitment in general at the safety position. He's already in a great spot in 2026 with guys like Zach Fort, with guys like Blaine Bradford. A lot of great safeties are on the board. Mike Mickens has been putting in the work, to say the least.
You look what he was able to do with JaDon in a shortened recruiting window. You start getting excited about what he can do when he's there from start to finish. Exactly. So it's pretty exciting. So, I mean, that's going to be the key though, Ryan, is it's awesome. It's awesome that they did this in this class, but what does Georgia do? What does Bama do under Saban? What did Clemson do when they were really rolling? What does Ohio State do? They do this constantly. And that's going to be the next step for this. Now, you rightly brought up Ivan Taylor back into this. Okay, that's a big important piece to this. Well, now you've got something to sell him. Hey, man, look, where are you going to go that you're going to be part of a better DB class? Like, really, you go somewhere else, you're not going to be surrounded by this, which is going to make you better, right? I mean, that's the reality of it. But the other part of it, too, is, okay, yeah, you did great here, but now it's about stacking up classes back to back. And I will say this, they did a great job of rebuilding the depth chart the last 2 years. Chris O'Leary got better with this 25 class. He did a great – he was the guy that we questioned as a recruiter, justifiably so, in the previous 2 classes, did a much better job here with Ivan and JaDon. But you did do some good things. You got a Don Schuler in the 23 class. You got Ben Minnick, who's a good depth piece in the 23 class. You got Luke Talich to turn down scholarship offers to Pac-12 schools to come here and be a walk-on. He's now on scholarship. You get Bronte Johnson last year. Huge pickup. Kennedy Urlacher's already had some success at Notre Dame. The staff is very high on him. We'll see what Tabron Benny Powell can do. But what this class was, Ryan, this was your first true elite level talent class, top to bottom. That's what separates this class and the potential that it brings to the table. And okay, now the question is, okay, great, you did it. You happen to have some guys that were Notre Dame fits this year, but can you do it next year? Can you go out and get Braylon, Womack? Can you beat Ohio State for a DB they want? Can you go down to the South and beat Ohio State and Georgia and Alabama for a kid they want? Can you go out and get another IMG kid? Maybe it's Zach Fort, which you just haven't had success recruiting IMG skill players for a while. Can you have success going down to Louisiana and getting an elite player like Blaine Bradford to come play, knowing that they're going to have to compete with this because Georgia can do that, right? You don't sign with Georgia if you're afraid of competition, right? I mean, there's a lot of kids like that. Can Notre Dame do that? That's going to be the next question that we have to find out about Mike Mickens and this recruiting staff's ability to kind of string these together. I think he's done it at corner. I think he's proven that at corner. Now, can he do that as with the safeties? That's going to be the next challenge for Coach Mickens.
Yeah, well, I mean, he certainly has it all in front of him here, right? I mean, you help solidify what looks like a elite class at safety in 2025. Now, 2026, I mean, none of the names that I'm mentioning aren't potential top 100 players, top 150 players. I mean, that's what they all are. Zach Fort is the only IMG Academy kid to ever be named a captain as a freshman. I mean, for just comparison, Blaine Bradford is in LSU's backyard, but he likes Notre Dame. Braylon Womack is a kid out of Mississippi that, I mean, you just haven't had many guys sign with Notre Dame out of Mississippi historically, and he likes Notre Dame a lot. Yeah. Now, you need to get your big boy pants on because you need to beat the elite of the elite for those types of players. But by all accounts,
those last two are top 50 guys, Ryan. I mean, Blaine Bradford and Braylon Womack are top 50. Not our opinion, top 50 guys. I mean,
consensus top 50 guys.
I mean, and those type of guys tend to have more attention. I mean, Blaine Bradford is ranked number 10 nationally by On3, number 22 by ESPN, and number 20 by Rivals. Right. I mean, that's a guy that is that's an elite player. You look at Braylon Womack, for example, and same thing. Braylon Womack is ranked number 16 by ESPN, number 26 by 247 Sports, and then On3 and Rivals both have him number 53 overall. Yep. You know what I mean? So and then you look at Zach Fort, and he's not exactly, a chump change. He's ranked number 37 by ESPN, number 445 by 247 Sports, and number 67 by Rivals. So they're big game hunting in the 26 class. And here's the thing, getting JaDon Blair in the class that you got now allows you to do that. Getting the 3 players in each of the last 2 years allows you to do that because now numbers wise, you're good. You went out and got some impact guys in this class because now that you've solidified things from a number standpoint, Ryan, you can now shoot for the moon in next year's class because numbers aren't your problem anymore. Now it's about, okay, can we recruit guys that are as good as JaDon Blair and Ivan Taylor and guys like that, Bronte Johnson? Now that's your next big question. But you can shoot for those guys, even if it plays out a little longer because of guys like getting JaDon Blair and Ivan Taylor and guys like that in this class.
It's the place you always want to be. You don't want to have to be hindered on having to go for a lower ranked player, a player that you like but don't love because you need numbers and you can't get numbers. You want to be able to be in a roster construction perspective where you're happy with what is in your class, what is happy with what's in your roster, and that allows you to now recruit the best of the best. That is ultimately how you do cuts, close, and extend gaps in a lot of areas.
What a difference a year makes. A year from now at this time, Notre Dame was scrambling. Well, actually, it was in June, a year as of June, they're scrambling. They'd missed out on some top safety targets. And they're bringing a kid in to work out that they're hoping they can beat, Indiana, Kentucky for, and Tabron Benny Powell and guys like that. And who had a great senior year. But, that's where you were a year ago. You were, crossing your fingers hoping that he would, he's going to pan out and those type of things. Where now it's like you're sitting back waiting on another elite player to join the class. It just really goes to show the difference that this staff has been able to make when it comes to just changing the entire perspective and just the type of players they're getting in a very short period of time, right? And then, like you said, I'm looking through your DB board and I'm like, these are all dudes. And I'm like, they're not even stretches. Like he's
No.
not even – it's like you didn't do the whole let's throw out the early big names so people can get excited when we all know they're really not going to get these guys, right? Like
Right.
it wasn't that kind of it's like, yeah, they got a shot there. Yeah, they got a shot. It'll be a little tougher there, but they're in the ball game. You know what I mean? Like it's like they've changed the game, Ryan, when it comes to recruiting at positions where people 5 years ago didn't think you could do that because it's just too hard at Notre Dame and you got to shop down a different aisle. They're shopping down a different aisle, all right. Different aisle from everybody except for Ohio State, Bama, Georgia, and teams like that. That's what they're shopping at.
Well, Brian Smith talked about it when he was at the Under Armour Future 50 events where he's talking to his defensive backs. And you know how Brian is. Like, he's very, like, he's direct. Like, he'll tell you how he feels. And he's like, Notre Dame is in with all these Southeastern defensive backs. Like, this is kind of wild. And that doesn't even count like Joey O'Brien, who's a more traditional-ish type of player where Notre Dame's going to look at. Jordan Thomas, who's a New Jersey kid. Like, those are more Northern kids. But we're talking about Jazavian Currents. Like, we're talking about Zach Fort. We're talking about Blaine Bradford. We're talking about Aaron Gregory. You're talking about kids that are from – you're talking about kids that are just not from traditional Notre Dame areas that Notre Dame is making headlines with so far.
That they wouldn't even have tried to recruit in the past. That's the reality of it, Ryan. They would have – I mean, Jordan Thomas is a heck of a player. I mean, I like his film a lot. Joey Bryan is one of my favorite recruits in the 2026 class. You need those guys. That's not the issue is never taking the Joey O'Briens to the Jordan Thomases. The issue is, are you getting them along with the JaDon Blair types, right? Like Notre Dame should always get Mark Zachary. They haven't, but they should always get that. They should always get Ethan Long. So it's a high IQ, really smart, great kid, great family, Northeastern player that goes to a prestigious high school in Connecticut. I'm sorry. Right. I expect Notre Dame to win that battle. But can you combine those two guys who are darn good football players? Cree Thomas, good. I mean, Cree Thomas, we hardly mention, and he's playing in the Army All-American Bowl. You know what I mean? Like,
and he had offers from Oregon and some others too. So
and he's a really good football player that's now overshadowed where a few years ago, he's the best DB in your class, you know, and then, but okay, that's great. That's a great start. That's really good. That's what's made Notre Dame a perennial 10+ win team. But championships are won because you get those guys, but then you complement them with the Ivan Taylors, the Dallas Goldens, and the JaDon Blairs. That's what's really changing the game for Notre Dame right now. And this really taking this thing over the top when it comes to truly recruiting at an elite level. Because you almost kind of, the point you were making earlier, Ryan, is like, hey, Brian, your shirt might be a little bit outdated for the conversation we're having now. Right? Like
at certain positions,
you know what I mean? Like it's like, yeah, the gap's kind of closed, my man. It's like now it's about establishing it with consistency and either maintaining or separating the way that other schools. I mean, because that's the goal. Can Notre Dame separate the way that Bama has and Georgia has? We'll find out. They're not there yet. At some positions, they've always been there, tight end, O-line, whatever. But can they do that across the board? Well, we don't know that yet. But they're getting to that point where now that becomes the question, not can they close the gap. We're just talking recruiting right now. Obviously, they got a lot to prove on the field to close the gap, but just recruiting-wise, it's like, okay, you've closed the gap. Now what's next? You're just kind of happy where you are. Do you try to take it to the next level? Because they always say, Ryan, you can't win a championship without big-time talent. And then they'll say, well, you can't recruit big-time talent if you're not winning. Well, Notre Dame is kind of at that point now where they've won enough to where they can, and they've got the type of staff in place where they can say, hey, look, we're getting some big-time football players that we hadn't gotten before at the volume we're getting them. Then if you go win with that, then it makes that next step so much easier. But it really is impressive that they're putting this DB class together when they don't have a 10-year track record of putting guys in the NFL at these two positions. You know, where they don't have a 10-year track record of just having an elite secondary. Like they had a couple. 18 was pretty darn good. You know, but then it was like before and after was like not very good. You know what I mean? There was like some of that a little bit. And that's the thing that you get excited about and say, okay, you did this. Now let's go out and see what you can do next. And then also keep everybody in the class because, look, schools down south are not going to stop recruiting Ivan Taylor and JaDon Blair and Mark Zachary, and schools in the Big Ten are not going to stop recruiting Mark Zachary and Ethan Long. And people aren't going to – I mean, people are going to be in Cree Thomas's ear like, hey, man, you know, look at that depth Notre Dame's getting. Are you sure you want to go there? Right? So, I mean, so now it's about, okay, you got to keep it together. and then keep building on it. So that's kind of where Notre Dame's at. Before we wrap up here, Ryan, we do have a couple super chats we want to get to. We answered this one, kind of AST12321 said, super chat, thank you very much for that. Says, will JaDon be joining the stream? This was before, so he obviously did. It was really annoying that the stream broke up at his On3 decision stream. I kind of want to hear from him. We didn't have any technical difficulties with that thing. So yeah, so we're good. Obviously, this is why y'all need to stick with IB, but we appreciate the super chat. And Marky Stewart with a super sticker. Thank you, Mark, very, very much. Miles Whitaker with one as well. Thank you very, very much. Very, very much, Miles. My man Kay Grant with the big one. Thank you. Let's go. Ready to go for that. And Iden Benami with the super chat. How long has this been a done deal for? Don't go RR. So I just want to say something real quick, first of all.
Yep.
Monday will be Ryan's last show as a full-time employee at Irish Breakdown. But just so you guys know, Ryan's not completely going away. He's still going to be part of some things we're doing. He's still going to be doing some post-game shows, some other things. So we will have Ryan back from time to time. But yes, we are getting close to that, Ryan. But this is a great situation for Ryan, guys. So if you care about Ryan, then you shouldn't be like, don't go. You should say, hey, man, we love you. Thank you for everything you've done. But we're happy about this next opportunity. And you guys will understand soon enough.
Yeah. And how long has it been a done deal for? I would say, again, this wasn't he's been silent commit for a month and then he just announced it now. Like he did go through his process, right? But I mean, I put my crystal super prediction in about 7 months ago for JaDon Blair, obviously joking, but he has been obviously in Notre Dame's to beat for quite a while now.
So from the conversations I had, the final decision did not get made until after the officials were over.
Yes.
It was really a process because for JaDon, Notre Dame was the clear leader going into the visits. And, and they weren't afraid to tell people that they trusted, and they weren't afraid to tell the coaches on the other teams. Everybody knew that Notre Dame was the team to knock off the peg if you want to get him.
Right.
But the thing, and this isn't going to surprise anybody, Ryan, they truly did go into this process of the final officials as open-minded as they possibly could be. Right? Like you can't be completely open-minded because you can't erase the relationships and the experiences and all that kind of stuff. But they truly did go into it saying, hey, we want to give everybody this last shot and really make sure that this is what JaDon wants to do. But at the same time, it was sort of confirming what they already felt. And I had somebody very, very close to this situation say before the officials, it's like 99% it's going to be Notre Dame. But, and there was always that but this isn't just doing officials just for the sake of officials. He really needs to make sure that this is the right decision for him because he's not okay, I'm going to do this now, but in 3 months I'm going to flip. This is it for him.
Yeah.
But nobody could put enough chinks in the armor, so to speak, for Notre Dame where they were able to kind of, and it wasn't close. And kudos to JaDon and his family for all the tweets and stuff to try to make it seem like it was like a thing. And there were some other people that were saying, oh, Notre Dame's tied it up or Michigan's tied it up. No, they didn't. They might have tied it up with Penn State for number 2, but whoever was telling you that was lying to you. Just letting y'all know that right now. But to Ryan's point, he never silently committed before the visits. I mean, he let the staffs know within the last week, where it was. But so it wasn't a silent commitment. He made his decision and he informed the staffs, and then the announcement came next. Yep. So there's a reason why a bunch of non-Notre Dame people started putting in crystal balls a couple days ago for Notre Dame. It's because those staff started informing the reporters where he was going. So that's kind of how that one played out. Matt S. with a super chat. I'd say Notre Dame has recovered nicely from the Bowen debacle in the 23 class.
They have. They absolutely have. I mean, 2024 obviously had its ups and downs. With 2025, you've obviously solidified a tremendous safety class, and 2026 looks great so far. So yes, the true competitors don't let just the victories define them. It's also the losses and the turbulence along the way. And they obviously went past that pretty well overall.
And obviously Mike Mickens deserves a lot of credit for finishing this one up. But we can't take – like we were very hard on Chris O'Leary as a recruiter, very good position coach, as a recruiter. And his lack of recruiting prowess was part of the reason why they had some of those issues. I don't blame for the Peyton Bowen thing. That had nothing to do with Chris O'Leary. That was all about Peyton Bowen. And then the 24 class had some ups and downs, like you mentioned, Ryan. But, boy, when he found his groove, he found his groove.
Yeah.
When you look at this 2025 class. I mean, there was really good safeties on the board that they could have pushed for and landed if it was like if they really wanted Jameer Joseph, I think they could have potentially landed him. But he always knew he was a backup option.
Yeah.
Like there were some good DBs on the board. Like the kid that committed to Cal the other day, Trey Harrison, that's a good football player.
Yeah, he's a good
but
player.
they never pushed for him because they had just done so well with these other guys. 10 years ago, Trey Harrison's a take, definitely, and you're fired up about it. And by the way, really good pickup for Cal also, by the way, Ryan. But that's the thing that's
Yeah. I missed that one completely that he committed there.
Yeah, I think it was really weird timing when it happened. But that's the thing is there were some really good players on the board that they turned down because of how well they did. And Mike Mickens has to close the deal, but you have to give a lot of props to Chris O'Leary for laying the foundation for what this O-line class became. It's kind of like what Coach Easton did last year.
Safety class.
Yeah. It's kind of, I was thinking O-line. It's kind of like what Coach Easton did last year. I mean, he got a commitment from Peter Jones. Yep. They were in a good position with Gerby and Styles when he left. And now it's up to the new O-line coach to come in and say, hey, you've got to now win these. We're in a good position. We got to win these. That's kind of what it was like with this Chris O'Leary to Mike Mickens transition is, hey, man, I've put us in a good position. Now it's up to you to seal the deal. And then now the 26 class is Mickens' chance to go say, hey, I can start to finish, go get this thing done. Yeah. And, which is where Rudolph was a year ago with the 25 class. And he's now done that.
Yep.
Right.
Very good 25 class.
Yep. All right. Here's one from Alex Udell. Sorry, B. Ryan. I'm joining late. Just watched the commitment video. A couple things. That's 100% a Notre Dame kid. 2, love that guy after he picked up the Indy hat that hollered out the real gold helmet. Did you hear that, Ryan?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That was pretty awesome.
Definitely a Notre Dame kid, though. You're absolutely correct, Alex. No doubt about that one.
Here's one for you, Ryan, from Indy Milton fan. Thank you for the super chat, Indy Milton fan. How would you compare Blair and Hamilton as juniors? So did you see Kyle's high school film?
Nah, I mean, I watched it, but I never like sat down and like really evaluated like that. But yeah.
So I did. So I actually I had Kyle as a 5-star when everybody else had him as a 3-star. You could see the talent early on. The difference to me is Kyle had a bigger frame. To me, Kyle had like a little broader shoulders. Like you could see that kid's going to be 215-ish, maybe even 220-ish, and still be able to be a safety. Kyle was short area, really explosive and rangy, like JaDon. I would argue that JaDon's a little bit more nimble. Kyle was a little bit more explosive from a power standpoint. At the same time, Kyle looks a bit longer arms wise, but that also might be because he has kind of broader shoulders.
He had like 34-inch arms too,
yeah.
So he has a freakishly long arms for his size. Yep.
So, but overall, right? I mean, there are a lot of similar. Like you and I, one of our biggest pet peeves is lazy comps, right? Yep. Like every 6'1" or shorter white receiver is going to get compared to Ladd McConkey or Cooper Kupp. It's just lazy, right? But this one just fits. It's like this is a legitimate comp, not just because they're 6'4", but they do have somewhat similar overall skill sets. And I'd say Kyle was just a touch bit more productive and powerful. But I'll say this: I don't believe I had I think I just had 4 and 5 stars. I don't think I had the 4.5 star yet for Kyle's class. And if I did, he might have been a 4.5 star type of guy as a junior. And then by a senior year, it was obvious that he would have been a 5-star. So if I'm just being honest, I don't know that I would have had him as a 5-star if I had the system the way that I have now. But there are a lot of easy similarities between the two. And I'd say this, I think Kyle was more of a natural downhill guy, where JaDon has more at the high school level, has more coverage instincts. Like he's a little bit more, play over the top, play man, where Kyle was just like downhill and just super rangy, but they're both excellent players. Irish for Life 99, I have to bounce. Thank you for the super chat, my man. I have to bounce, but I just wanted to say thanks for a great show and the Blair family interview. Good day to be Irish. Yes, sir. And last one from my guy, Mark E. Stewart. Thank you for the super chat, Mark. He says, it seemed when we hired Coach Freeman, we were going to be relying on him to be the heavy as a recruiter, But now it seems like others on the staff are making the difference as well.
Well, I feel like, Mark, and I think this is a leadership thing, right? When you're a leader that's coming in and creating a culture, I think that you need to find like-minded individuals to be underneath of you as far as creating a standard culture, but also you need to, I don't want to say teach, but like you need to instill things in people to understand exactly what you're looking for, what the work ethic looks like, what the grind looks like, what the process looks like all those things are what needs to be kind of created and harbored and manufactured a little bit, right? So I think that some coaches, maybe it takes a little bit of time to find the footing in that regard, coming out from that shadow. But I think overall, Coach Freeman in large is going to have a staff of excellent recruiters because that's the image that he wants to create.
Ryan, if Marcus Freeman had the same coaching staff that Brian Kelly had at the end of his tenure, they would have recruited better than they did under Brian Kelly.
Sure. But
you don't recruit to the level they are now just because of him. It's not possible. One coach cannot have that big of an impact where it requires Chad Bowden and the staff he's put together. Yep. The off the field operation that they had when Dre Brown was here, Carter Allman, the Caleb Davis kid that is now running the director of player personnel at Troy. I mean, two of Notre Dame's recruiting assistants under Chad are now basically directors of player personnel at other schools. Caleb is at Troy, Dre's now at Illinois, and Wisconsin tried to hire Carter. That says a lot about what the nation thinks of what Notre Dame is doing from a recruiting operation standpoint. That matters. But also to Ryan's point, you also need assistant coaches. That's so important. Chad and Marcus and Coach Freeman can only take you so far. They could crush it with Owen Strebig and Will Black and Matty Augustine. But at the end of the day, if Joe Rudolph is not connecting with them, it won't matter. They'll just finish second a lot, right? I mean, you can sell Notre Dame all you want, but if Mike Mickens isn't connecting with Dallas Golden and Mark Zachary as a position coach, the rest of it ultimately doesn't matter. And the same thing is true at running back and wide receiver and tight end and quarterback. I mean, yes, Chad's done a great job and Coach Freeman's done a great job, but Tommy Rees did a phenomenal job with CJ Carr and then connecting with Kenny Minchie to where when he was having second thoughts, he reached back out to Notre Dame. And then Gino Gadouli's built on that, going out and getting Deuce Knight and Noah Grubbs. Listen, if the quarterback's coach at Notre Dame wasn't really that much of a recruiter and didn't connect well with players, I don't know that you have both Deuce Knight and Noah Grubbs in the class. I just don't know if you have that.
They wouldn't have Deuce in this class without Gino Gadouli.
So yes, Coach Freeman plays a big role in that, Ryan. Chad played a big role in that, Ryan. And the OC will do the same thing. But you have to be able to connect from a position coach level if you want to truly win these battles consistently. And that's what's different. But the part of the thing too is, Ryan, when the head coach is that way, I have to do this or I may be out of a job. I mean, that's part of it as well. So yes, Coach Freeman has changed the game. His hiring of Chad was changing. And now you see teams all over the country are kind of doing what Notre Dame did with Chad. And so, and they weren't the only ones that did that, but them and a couple other schools are making this now. Everybody's trying to find their version of Chad.
Sure.
But like you said, but Dylan's crushing it.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Rudolph's doing a great job.
Max Bulla
Bulla's doing a great job. Yeah. Mike Mickens was doing a great job. And Marty Biagi's not going to get a lot of credit for recruits because there's just no position that he's recruiting per se, but he's very involved in a lot of these kids as well, Ryan. Just it's more as a second, he's not going to get the love because he's not their quote unquote position coach, but he's very involved in this recruiting aspect as well. And that's important also.
Well, if they end up getting, I mean, speaking for Marty, Coach Biagi, if they end up getting
to Nuke Hines.
If they end up getting to Nuke Hines, there's a big assist that needs to go to Coach Biagi. If they end up getting Braylon Womack in the future as well, Marty Biagi's another guy that you need to throw a little bit of he did a lot of groundwork early on in that recruitment as well. So yes, Coach Biagi is definitely involved, especially with he goes down Hawaii a lot. He goes down to Texas a lot. A lot of those kids do talk to Marty pretty consistently.
Right. And that aspect is how many times, Ryan, have you talked to a kid and you get to the point where you say, hey, look, they're taking this thing to a certain level, and it's just because of this one coach. I mean, how many kids have you talked to that only talk to one coach at Notre Dame, that Notre Dame actually wants? Usually when they're only talking to one coach, it's because they're not a top target. But that's the thing. That's what's so different, Ryan. And I wish you were covered recruiting before Freeman and you'd had something to compare it to. But like that is truly game changing for how Notre Dame does this now. It used to be just like back in the day, they actually only did it regionally. You'd rarely, kids from certain regions will only talk to the regional recruiter. They'd sometimes talk to the position coach. Then it became position coach driven. But now it's like everybody's involved. Everybody's involved in these recruitments. And every time I read an article from you, it's like there's like at least three people mentioned. It's always Market, it's always Coach Freeman, the position coach, and Chad. And sometimes it's Freeman, the position coach, Chad, and the coordinator, on that side of the ball. And that's really what feels like it. But it's Coach Freeman's the one that sets that standard, right? Like that's the one who says, this is how we're going to do things. And it's worked out tremendously well so far.
No doubt.
Tremendously well. Well, Ryan, that is going to do it. I think that was a great show, Jim. You're welcome. And that's going to do it for today's show, Ryan. Big commitment for Notre Dame, guys. Ryan's got another story up on the site now. We're going to get some more stuff up on this recruitment and kind of what comes next for Notre Dame. Actually, what comes next, you kind of already wrote that article, Ryan. You put that up yesterday when you're talking about the DB board. But just a huge commitment for Notre Dame, everybody. Thank you for being with us. Remember, tonight, 6 o'clock, IB Nation Sports Talk. They're going to have their We In, We Out segment. It's going to be Vince and Sean. So have some fun with that. Tomorrow at noon, we're going to have a mailbag at 12 o'clock. So be ready for that. Get those questions ready, locked and loaded. We're going to have a mailbag tomorrow. And then we'll be back on Monday for the next Notre Dame recruiting hour. So be ready to join that one. That's why you need to not only hit that like and subscribe for this show, but make sure that you've subscribed to the channel and turn your notification bells on so that when we do future shows, you will know what's coming up. So for Ryan, I'm Bryan. Have an amazing rest of your day, everybody, and an amazing weekend. And we will talk to you all very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.